Hello and welcome back. Once again, I'm Miss Delia and we're going to continue with the next subtopic in Chapter 2, Ecology. In this video, we're looking at 2.4, Conservation and Management. I'm sure that talking about this topic, you already have a clear idea of what conservation of nature would be, not only in Malaysia, but in other countries throughout the world as well. Now, with all that abundant and extra information, it's good for us to learn more. But for the purpose of this lesson, I'm going to be focusing on the following three learning outcomes. So yang kamu belajar di luar pasal pemeliharaan dan pemeliharaan itu, kebanyakannya memang betul, cuma untuk kita punya syllabus, saya tidak mau bebankan kamu, jadi saya tekankan tiga learning outcome ini saja. So the first learning outcome is that I hope by the end of this lesson, you would be able to describe what is sustainable development, you would be able to explain the threats to biodiversity in Malaysia, and last but not least, illustrate the conservation of diversity in Malaysia. With that being said, if you're ready, let's continue. All right, let's talk about sustainable development. You may have heard it before, you may have not, or you may have heard sustainability rather than sustainable development. It's more or less the same thing, and we'll look at the definition. The definition for that is that it is a development that will fulfill the current needs without compromising the needs of the future generations. So, ini adalah perkembangan sama ada dari segi perindustrian ka, pembinaan, perhutanan, penternakan, penanaman, dan sebagainya. Kita lakukan semua itu untuk memenuhkan keperluan kita tanpa memudaratkan generasi akan datang. Okay, so cukup-cukup untuk kita tidak kasih susah orang like kind of thing. And this sustainable development is also done through preservation and conservation. Dia akan melibatkan usaha pemeliharaan dan pemuliharaan. Alright, for this lesson, I'm going to focus on sustainable forestry and sustainable agriculture. So, kita akan fokus kepada perhutanan, penternakan, dan penanaman. Tapi, outside of our syllabus, there is also sustainable buildings, sustainable industries. It's much more depth, and feel free to learn about that if you want to, especially what we can do as consumers, and if you want to go into businesses and all that stuff, and engineering, there's a lot to learn. But I'm going to teach you only two things. The first of those two things is sustainable forestry. Sustainable forestry aims to maintain and enhance our forest system for the benefit of the present and future generations of living organisms. So we're taking care of it so we can enjoy it, and our future generations can also enjoy it. But it's not just about us, it's also about other living organisms such as the plants and the animals and the fungi that are living in this world as well. Sustainable forestry is done by reforestation and conservation of forest systems. Jadi yang sudah ditebang, kita tanam balik. Yang belum ditebang, kita jaga. This also includes the efforts by which you would only cut down trees if they're of a certain age. Mungkin kamu pernah dengar yang, okay, kalau mau tebang pokok, dia mesti melebihi 5 ka, 6 ka, 15 tahun, bergantung kepada spesies pokok tersebut. Okay, so that is also an example of sustainable forestry. Moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about sustainable agriculture, which is the second thing I want to talk about when it comes to sustainable development. Sustainable agriculture integrates all elements of agriculture management for the benefit of the present and future generations of living organisms. So once again, it's not just about us, it's also about other living organisms. Jadi kalau kita cakap pasal penanaman, itu kita akan melibatkan banyak aspek. Daripada orang yang menanam, daripada aspek penggunaan racun, penggunaan baja dan sebagainya, sampai kepada penghasilan produk. It integrates all elements of agriculture, and we make sure that we try to do the good things so that the quality of life is ensured for our present and future generations without harming the environment. Sustainable agriculture can be done by the control of pesticide use, by crop rotation, and by biological control. So when we talk about control of pesticides, kita cuba untuk pilih racun serangga yang kurang memudaratkan ataupun kurangkan bilangan racun serangga yang digunakan, ataupun tidak menggunakan racun serangga langsung. So it's either control how much is used or don't use pesticides at all. Now, some of you may be thinking, does this have anything to do with organic farming? If you thought that, well, you are quite right. The definition of organic farming is that they try to use environmentally friendly or organic, natural methods to farming. Okay, kalau organic farming ni, kalau ikut betul, dia sepatutnya menggunakan, kalau dia ada guna racun, itu adalah racun yang eco-friendly, ataupun tidak gunakan racun langsung. Dan kalau dia gunakan baja, dia adalah menggunakan baja yang natural. Contohnya, baja tai ayam. So, you can go and learn more about organic farming, but do keep in mind, the word organic and organic farming can be misinterpreted. Okay, kadang orang salah faham organic ini macam mana. Jadi, walaupun dia label organic di sana, kamu masih perlu ambil tahu, okay, how is it properly grown? Walaupun dia label organic, betulkah dia tidak guna racun? Betulkah dia tidak guna bajak sintetik? Dan sebagainya. Okay, so the label doesn't tell you everything. Do your own research. But as long as we control how much pesticides we used, that is already a step towards sustainable agriculture. Now, the second thing that is in this slide here, crop rotation. What is crop rotation? Kasi pusing itu tumbuhan. It's talking about for this time that you're planting crops A. The next time you plant on the same soil, you're using crops B. The third time you're planting on the same soil, you're rotating to another crop, which is crop C. After crop C, next time you plant, you can go back to crop A. So, contoh, kamu boleh mula tahun ini kita tanam jagung. Lepas itu, sudah dapat untung. Okay, jagung itu semua sudah layu, sudah mati. Okay, fine. Next time, we are going to plant legumes. Kita tanam kacang pula. Lepas kacang, okay, sudah habis, harvest, sudah cabut. Third time, we are going to plant on the same piece of land. Tanah yang sama, kita mungkin tanam bayam, sayur-sayur daun, dan sebagainya. So, bila kita pusing-pusing, kita kasih tukar-tukar tanaman yang kita tanam, kita pastikan yang nutrien yang ada dalam tanah itu tidak terus habis. Because different plants are going to use different levels of nutrients. Some of them may need more phosphorus, some of them may need more nitrogen, etc., etc. So, when you do crop rotation, you're making sure that you're kind of giving the earth more time to replenish some of those nutrients or some of those elements. So it's just based on that concept. Learn more about crop rotations on your own. And last but not least, what we have over here is biological control. I'm sure you learned about this before. Instead of putting poison, instead of putting pesticides or traps, we could just introduce the natural predators of your pest. Contoh dia, kalau kamu di ladang kelapa sawit, ada banyak tikus di ladang kelapa sawit makan hasil tanaman kamu. Jadi, daripada kamu sediakan banyak perangkap tikus, banyak racun tikus dan sebagainya, kamu kenalkan burung hantu. You introduce an owl into the palm oil plantation so that it eats all the rats that are going to eat up your crops, basically. And that is a use of biological control. How we got to have cats as our pets is because they became a form of biological control when we had rats in our places. Okay, so pada asalnya kucing jadi kita punya haiwan peliharaan sebab tempat tinggal manusia ada tikus, kucing datang, lama-kelamaan kucing tu selesa, kita pun suka kucing tu, and dia jadi our pet. That is example of biological control. Of course, there are many, many other types of biological control. You can even have biological control in a marine environment or in an aquatic environment. Dalam kita punya aquarium pun boleh ada biological control. Okay, go ahead and learn more about that on your own. That's all that I'm going to tell you about sustainable forestry and agriculture. The reason why we talk about the need for sustainable development is because our environment is in danger. Danger from what? Well, let's talk about the danger. What are the threats to biodiversity in Malaysia? Apa yang membahayakan biodiversity di Malaysia sekarang? Mengancam, ancaman dia. The first is habitat destruction. A lot of our biodiversity is in our natural environment, such as in our forests, in our rivers, and human activities can lead to a lot of habitat destruction. So contoh, manusia perlukan kayu balak, jadi manusia tebang hutan. Bila manusia tebang hutan, habitat haiwan di hutan itu sudah musnah. Oh no, that is one of the ancaman. So we are, that's pretty bad. The second bad thing is pollution. Again, because of these pesky humans. Humans, we tend to produce a lot of waste, and that waste can lead to water pollution, air pollution, soil pollution, sound pollution, light pollution, etc., etc., etc. And that's not very good for the animals and plants that live with us. So pollution bad to biodiversity. The third threat that we talk about is over-exploitation. So memang kita boleh ambil hasil-hasil hutan. We can take those resources from the environment. We can take those resources by mining gold, mining tin, mining silver, etc. We can, of course, go and eat the fish that are in the ocean and catch all the shellfish that we want to eat. But when we take too much, that's bad for the environment because nature does not have enough time to replenish all those resources. So overexploitation of resources disrupts the balance in those ecosystems that our biodiverse environment depends on. Okay, that's point number 3. And point number 4, one of the threats to biodiversity in Malaysia is the introduction of exotic species. Bukan kalau kita mau cakap, kita lebih tekankan kepada spesies yang sedia ada di Malaysia dilabel sebagai haiwan eksotik. So this is less about introducing things outside into Malaysia. This is more about things in Malaysia are being introduced to the world as an exotic species. For example, turtles are naturally in Malaysia, but some reason they have been labeled as an exotic species. Then when they are labeled as exotic species, other people want to catch them, eat their eggs. Of course, I think being in Borneo, you would have heard or seen or even bought turtle eggs from these vendors, but although they are endangered species. So that's one of the examples there. Walaupun haiwan itu dalam dalam bahaya, dia terancam, haiwan terancam dan hampir pupus, tapi disebabkan dia adalah haiwan eksotik, orang masih mau tangkap dia, orang masih mau makan telur dia, orang masih mau buat ini itu, dan tidak jaga dia punya generasi akan datang. So that's example of it. Example of other exotic species are pangolins, orangutans, tigers, tapirs, elephants, etc., etc. All of these wonderful organisms can be exploited by those who do not have a care for their well-being or for their quality of life. I tend to talk a lot about these things, so I'm going to put a stop there. Of course, there are many other threats to biodiversity in Malaysia, but if you are asked to do an essay, please focus on these 4 first. All right, I'm moving on to the next slide. So the next slide, we're talking about how we conserve that biodiversity. Okay, dia terancam, apa yang kita lakukan untuk menjaga dia? In Malaysia, we have conservation that is in situ or on-site conservation. It is when we have the process of protecting an endangered plant or animal species in their natural habitat. Kalau kita tahu spesies itu terancam, kita ambil tahu di mana dia tinggal. Lepas tu kita lindungi tempat tinggal dia. Itu adalah in situ conservation. Examples of in situ conservation sites in Malaysia are the Gunung Mulu National Park, Taman Negara in Pahang, and the Kinabalu National Park. So as you can see here, these are terrestrial ecosystems. They can be forests, they can be rivers. It's easier to conserve a terrestrial ecosystem than it is to conserve a marine one, but I think we do have some effort to conserve some of our marine environments as well, if not mistaken, in and around Sipadan Island. Okay, so yeah. Ini adalah 3 contoh yang kukuh lah yang saya boleh tunjukkan in situ conservation di Malaysia. We also have ex situ conservation, ex situ out of sight. This is the process of protecting an endangered plant or animal species outside of their natural habitat. So it is a way to collect and transfer the flora and fauna to a smaller area so that they can be better conserved. Example of ex situ conservation in Malaysia is in zoos, aquariums, and botanical gardens. There's many examples, but I'm going to focus on these 4. The first most popular example is Zoo Negara, which you can find in Selangor. The second is Sabah Agricultural Park. I included this because Taman Pertanian Sabah is in Tenem, Sabah, where I'm from, my pride. And here in Labuan, we also have some ex situ conservation. We have the Labuan Botanical Gardens, which is home to many species of plants and orchids. And we also have the Labuan Bird Park. Although you can't visit them right now, I hope that you have the chance to visit them in the future. There are quite a number of different bird species that can be found in the Labuan Bird Park. So do have a visit when you have the chance. Okay, here is a video that I've included. You can find it in the slides, but I'll also include a link in the video description below. And there's no real points that I want from this video. Tiada yang perlu kamu faham atau hafal daripada sini. Cuma untuk bagi kamu tengok, nikmati, hargai apa yang ada di alam sekitar. It's just for you to appreciate what we've got left. And hopefully you will have the desire to protect what's left in this world as well. It's a beautiful place. Let's try to keep it clean. Now, with that very long ramble from me, okay, selesai saya merepek, sekarang masa untuk kita summarize. It's time for a very quick summary. What did we talk about in this video? We talked about how to describe sustainable development. We talked about the threats to biodiversity in Malaysia. And last but not least, we talked about the conservation of biodiversity in Malaysia. So if you're asked to do an essay, once again, start with the points here before you add in any of your extra information. Your extra information is correct too. But remember, we are on a syllabus that depends on an answer scheme, so sometimes you have to go back to the syllabus. Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of the lesson. I hope that you're able to come up with your own notes for this subtopic and then complete the Google form quiz for this lesson. Thank you very much for your time and your attention, and I will see you again soon. Thank you and happy learning. Bye!